Mix It With Mike plugin of the week comes from Universal Audio as the Waterfall Rotary speaker. This is an emulation of the Leslie 147 cabinet and amplifier. This particular plugin is a release which is the extracted cabinet work that they did, or emulation that they did, from the Waterfall B3 plugin. These are both UADX, so these are native plugins. Neither of these actually work within the UAD architecture as of their processing to architecture as of the recording of this video. That may change over time, I expect. So essentially what you have is this extracted out, pretty much all of the same feature, a couple new things that are added in over here, I believe. More or less it's the same. So we're going to, just so you know where it's coming from, we'll start there, and then we will kind of pick it up from there, just in terms of going over what it does and what it sounds like. Essentially, the plugin itself starts with a volume control. Now, they added a drive control. There is no drive control on the unit. You can saturate it because it's feeding into a tube amp. You could drive it just by pushing the volume up, but then they also have a separate saturation knob, and it gives you sort of like a slightly different characteristic distortion. Combination of the two can allow you to really overdrive it, or to get some subtle variations on clean to a little bit edgy and all of this stuff in between. What we have here are the switches for the speed of the rotating horn and the rotating drum. Fast and slow are the two options. The braking option is one that's in between. If you have this here, what's cool is that you can actually click and drag and move around the horn, so whatever your mic position is, you can actually focus the specific tone from a brake stop position if you were looking for just that sort of static sound as opposed to something that's rotating. Otherwise, you have slow and fast speed, and then you have speed trims which work for the drum and for the horn independently. So we can increase it, make it faster or slower relative to the setting that we have here. Okay, so it gives you the ability to sort of, kind of dial it in at something that's a bit closer to the tempo. Be nice to have a little just, tempo thing, do all the calculations for you, not the way that they have it laid out. There's also the acceleration, deceleration parameters, and this is something that ends up being an important part of working with it, particularly if you're working with it from a performance perspective on the organ, where you're switching the speed, where maybe you want certain things to have that, sort of fast rotating horn, some things you want it to be slower, some things you want it to break and just basically shut off. You would have all of those options. In the settings window here, you can also adjust the mechanical noise to get rid of all of the motors and all the other sort of stuff that's going on. But you could also decide what actually does the switching of the fast, slow, and braking, whether it's a sustain pedal, or a modulation wheel, all of that. So you can tap into it MIDI-wise and do that. This is a global bypass for the plugin, so that will bypass it in its totality. Pretty straightforward. And then what we have here is the selection for microphones. So we have 3 mic positions. There's a mono mic position. There's a stereo mic position, which is sort of coming in from the backside at an angle, and then a side position miking. So you'll get the most width out of this, and a slightly different tonal character coming through the louvers on the side. So that's that there. And then you have a mic selection. So you have a selection between an AKG 414, KM84, U87, a 421 Sennheiser, Shure 57, Coles ribbon mic 4038, and U67 tube mic from Neumann. On this side, we have a few different options for the drum. U87, RA20. This is a Sound Deluxe mic, which is emulating the FET 47 by Neumann. That's the iFET 7, and then there is the Tube 67. So we have that same option there, and we have 2 mic positions, one off axis or one straight on. So we have those. We have a balance control, so we can move it more towards one or the other. If we wanted to just use the rotating drum just for low end, we could also use just the rotating horn just for effect on that side. And we have all the balance controls and setups in between. So of the options, we have an output control. And so accordingly, when you start here, you'll get something, you know, at whatever basic volume. You kind of drive it as much as you want, adjust your output gain accordingly to balance it. So when you bypass it in and out, you get more or less something that's unity gain. That's the ideal thing. But it sounds great, and that's the important thing. So let's move on over to a couple of examples here. One is a guitar track here. Let me just play you the raw guitar track as it is set up. So taking this to another level, we could now apply this type of effect. It may or may not be appropriate, but we can apply this. Now, one thing to note here, just with this, in terms of routing wise, the unit itself, and many are modified so that you could just put a 1/4-inch jack right on the back of the cabinet, and then you could plug your guitar essentially directly into it. Just takes a high impedance input and go right into it and just play right through it and set your amp settings and all the other stuff, and then you just have the Hammond organ there only to set speed and adjust all of those other parameters. There was even a separate unit that would do all of those controls independently. That would plug in, you know, with this cable right here. So you have that option. But if you had something, you know, if you had something in stereo feeding into it, because it's always a mono input source, the way they designed this is that it will mono your left right, put that together, feed it through the amplification emulation, feed it to the rotating thing, and then whatever speaker or microphone position setup that you have, that is what will output, whether it's mono or stereo. So for example, with this guitar, if I just wanted to kind of create the effect but have it more of a mono positioning kind of thing, I could go that route. Just kind of give it its own thing, and then again, you know, here I can control the speed. Right, so I have the ability to just kind of switch it to mono. Otherwise, if I'm doing it stereo here, I have a lot of options. I can go to different mic positions. All right, so I like this, but with any of these, so if you start to go through all of these, now we have the options. So this came up with the 67. We can go with 4/14s. Like that ribbon mic has like a nice warm effect to it. And then we could go over here to the drum and maybe that gives a tighter. Maybe that gives a tighter sound, which might be more appropriate for a guitar that's sort of set back in the song, right? But you could hear you have like a lot of tonal options, just going from something that's a bit more biting and direct. You get a lot of, you can get like actually the 57s actually have quite a warm effect. You're not getting a lot of the top end. You can get more of that bite with the KM84s on the top end, and you get a bit more body and roundness out of a sound as well, just by going to something like this is just like a, you know, is it hyper or supercardioid? Really tight patterns is going to give you a much tighter low end, however it is that you want to do it. Again, just kind of play around with this a second here. One other option, going back to the mono thing, would be to just sort of freeze it on a particular tone. I'm not sure that's kind of appropriate for this, but let's just see. Again, probably not appropriate for this particular song, but at least it gives you an idea of like the direction where you can go. And then if you start popping in different microphones, setting up, you can get a certain tonal character out of it. I don't believe there's a way to bypass the cabinet and just run through the amp. That would be a kind of a cool feature. And as just one way to go about it, or the ability to bypass the amp and just go into the cabinet and kind of get the miking with the speaker without the tonal coloration of the amplifier. Either way, it gives you some kind of cool sonic possibilities. I like the fact that you can at least control the mechanical noise to pull that down. It's not excessively loud on its own. It can be quite loud, actually, in real life. You know, so to me, it seems like it's relatively pretty low by comparison, just on its own. But there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of tonal coloration. You could feed any kind of keyboard into it. You could feed vocals into it. You can create watery effects with reverb and delays and other types of things with it. Of course, you know, we probably heard the Leslie cabinet used on many things, which it has been over the years. You get the basic ideas of it, then it's all about the quality and what features it has. And this one, to me, sounds amazing and really fits the bill. Unfortunately, if you have the if you already have the Waterfall B3, there's no way to bypass that because it's an instrument and just use the cabinet. Otherwise, you wouldn't need this. But this would be the option to get all of that work that they did with emulating the cabinet and the microphone selection and everything else independent of the actual organ feeding into it. A pretty cool one. Always love UA. They always come out with great stuff. This is also kind of coming at a time where they're moving in more native now, allowing you to buy individual plugin bundles and individual plugins. I suppose it will only expand from here. And probably maybe by the time you watch this video, everything will be completely different. Who knows? But as of right now, that's what's happening. So there you have it. Plugin of the week from Universal Audio, the Waterfall Rotary Speaker, drawn out of the Waterfall B3, so that you can tap into the amplifier and cabinet. Worth checking out.